Welcome back to Morning Manna. My name is Anna Wiggins. Yesterday, we looked at Ephesians 6 as a reminder that God has called every believer to stand in the battle. While our battles today look different than they did in the Old Testament, there are some incredible stories of men and women who answered the call to battle, were equipped by God, and saw Him move in incredible ways. So throughout this week, we're going to look at one story in the book of Judges and see what the cast of characters has to teach us for our lives today. Our story takes place in Judges chapter 4, but before we get there, you need a little background, and I think there's a lesson for us even here. The book opens with the death of Joshua, but before Joshua died, he reminded the people of Israel that God had done incredible things on their behalf. He had rescued them. He had brought them out of slavery, and he implored them not to forsake their covenant with God for the worship of idols. You're probably familiar with Joshua chapter 24, verses 14 and 15. If not, take a trip to Hobby Lobby and you'll have it memorized. It's the one that says, "Choose this day whom you will serve. As for me and my house, we will serve the Lord." The book of Joshua closes with the Israelites' declaration of faithfulness to God. But by the second chapter of Judges, tragically, the author tells us that they abandoned the Lord to worship the gods of the people around them. And this is exactly what God knew would happen, which is why, as the tribes of Israel moved into the promised land, God told them to drive out the people who lived there. But rather than obey, the Israelites thought they knew better than God. Some enemies they drove out, some they enslaved, and some they made treaties with and chose to live among. God's instruction was for their protection, and soon those they sought to enslave ensnared them. To turn their hearts back toward Him, God allowed the enemies they lived with to become their oppressors. And here's a key. When we make peace with what God wars against, we open ourselves up to attack from the enemy. God's placed the heart of a warrior inside each of us. But sometimes the attack we experience in our lives comes because we've made peace with an enemy that the Prince of Peace wants to set us free from. The Israelites didn't openly say they knew better than God. I think in their minds they mostly did what God said. They didn't drive out all the Canaanites, but the ones that were left, they thought they had it under control. See, they didn't recognize the danger of their disobedience because they thought they had it under control. We'll go further in our story tomorrow, but today I want to ask you to give thought to the lesson the Israelites learned. Are there areas where you've made peace with something the Holy Spirit has been convicting you about? Is there a broken relationship, unforgiveness, a sin pattern, something you've been struggling with alone? Think you have it under control? Let me encourage you to take a step toward freedom, the freedom that God has for you, by finding a small group to help you put that thing to death. Though God's anger burned against the Israelites, His covenant with His people remained. They turned their back on Him and worshiped idols, but God did not forsake them. He didn't spare them the consequences of their sin, and we see that throughout the book. But when they cried out to Him, He made a way for their deliverance by raising up judges in the land. Judges chapter 2, verse 18 says, "Whenever the Lord raised up judges for them, the Lord was with the judge, and He saved them from the hand of their enemies all the days of the judge." Tomorrow, we'll meet our judge. She is quite the character.